The weight of her name. They thought framing a black teenager would be easy. They figured nobody powerful would notice. No one important would care. They forgot one crucial detail: her brother could flip the entire courtroom on its head. Naomi Brooks never imagined a quick trip to a strip mall in Scottsdale, Arizona, could put her entire future at risk. At 17, she was already accepted into Yale's pre-law program. Her teachers called her brilliant. Her track coach called her unstoppable, and her parents, both elementary school principals, couldn't have been prouder. That Saturday was supposed to be uneventful. Finals were 2 weeks away, and Naomi needed a new sketchbook. Her old one had finally fallen apart. She headed to a discount store called Budget Bazaar. It wasn't glamorous, but it was affordable and close. She even remembered her mom's half-joking advice from that morning: don't go spending a fortune on fancy paper, nay. Inside, the place was bustling. Kids weaved through aisles, a cashier called for a price check on aisle 7, and fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Naomi found a hardbound sketchbook pretty quickly. She waited in line, phone in hand, scrolling through art tutorials when a man in a blue polo shirt tapped her shoulder. He said he was the store manager. "I need you to come with me to the back," he said flatly. Naomi blinked. "What? Why?" "Someone reported you for putting something in your bag," he replied. She stared at him, confused. "I haven't taken anything," but his mind was made up. Customers stared as she was led through the store. Naomi felt their eyes on her, judging, labeling in a small, cluttered back office. The manager asked her to empty her pockets and backpack. She did. Her hands trembled slightly. Out came her phone, wallet, a few drawing pencils, and the new sketchbook, which still had its plastic wrapping. Nothing else. The manager frowned, a hint of annoyance on his face that she wasn't guilty, but he still insisted it was store policy to call the police. Naomi pleaded, her voice tight with fear, but it didn't matter. When the officer arrived, he was young and seemed indifferent as he handcuffed her. "Standard procedure," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. She sat in the back of the cruiser, watching her life blur through the tinted window. This wasn't supposed to happen to kids like her, the ones who stayed out of trouble, focused on their studies, had bright futures. Down at the precinct, they booked her for shoplifting. She kept repeating it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. No one seemed to care. Hours later, her wrists ached, and they handed her a court date and released her. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the shame and fear a heavy weight on her chest. The thought of losing everything she'd worked for, her acceptance to Yale, her reputation, her parents' trust, felt like a physical blow. The court date arrived with a chilling speed. Her parents, frantic and worried, hired a local public defender named Ms. Evans. She was overworked and seemed skeptical of Naomi's story, advising her to simply plead guilty to a lesser charge. "It'll make things easier," she'd said, barely looking at Naomi. Naomi refused. She walked into the Maricopa County Courthouse wearing a simple dress, her hands clammy as she clutched a portfolio of her artwork, awards from school, and the acceptance letter from Yale. She hoped it would show them who she really was. It didn't seem to. Judge Patricia Jenkins presided, a stern-faced woman with sharp eyes that conveyed impatience. When Naomi's name was called, the judge barely glanced at her. Naomi pleaded not guilty, her voice trembling slightly but firm. Judge Jenkins didn't ask for the store's security footage, which her public defender hadn't even requested. Ms. Evans offered a brief, unenthusiastic argument about it being a first offense. Instead, the judge quickly reviewed the police report and declared there was probable cause for a felony charge. Felony, the word echoed in Naomi's ears, cold and final. Her future, so carefully built, felt like it was crumbling before her eyes. She wanted to protest, to explain, but fear had lodged in her throat. She sat down heavily, tears welling, desperately thinking of someone who would believe her, someone who could help. Her brother, Devin Brooks, came to mind. But calling Devin wasn't just asking for help, it was igniting a firestorm. He wasn't just family. He was a rising star in the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division in Washington, D.C. Involving him meant bringing a federal spotlight onto a seemingly small-town case. 2 agonizing weeks crawled by. Naomi felt like she was living in a nightmare. Her parents were consumed by worry, their usual optimism replaced by a tense anxiety. On the morning of the preliminary hearing, Naomi sat in the waiting area, her hands twisting in her lap, her public defender offering little more than a sigh and a shrug. Devin's voice from their brief phone call kept replaying in her mind. "Hold on. Nay. I'm looking into things." She had no idea the whirlwind he had already set in motion. Inside courtroom 3A, Judge Jenkins called Naomi's case. Ms. Evans stood beside her, looking defeated before the proceedings even began. The prosecutor presented the store manager's testimony and the police report. When it was Ms. Evans's turn, she offered a weak argument for a reduced charge, again without mentioning the missing security footage. Judge Jenkins, with a dismissive wave of her hand, upheld the felony charge and set bail at an exorbitant $10,000. Naomi's parents exchanged a look of despair. Outside the courtroom, Ms. Evans mumbled about exploring options. Naomi felt a surge of panic. This couldn't be happening. She discreetly texted Devin, "It's bad. They aren't listening." His reply was immediate. "Don't worry. Help is on the way." Across the country, Devin was already making calls. He contacted Sarah Chin, a sharp and tenacious federal prosecutor in the Arizona district. "There's a clear injustice happening to my sister in Scottsdale. I need you to look into Judge Jenkins and this case immediately." Sarah, trusting Devin's judgment, didn't hesitate. "I'm on it." Devin added, "Find any pattern, any complaints, anything that seems out of line." The next morning, as Naomi sat with her distraught parents in the courthouse waiting room, a well-dressed woman approached them. "Ms. Brooks? I'm Sarah Chin from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Devin asked me to be here." Relief washed over Naomi. Finally, someone who would listen. Sarah listened intently as Naomi and her parents recounted the events. She asked pointed questions, her expression serious. Then, she addressed Ms. Evans. "Why wasn't the security footage from Budget Bazaar requested?" Ms. Evans stammered, offering a weak excuse about it likely not showing anything helpful. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." Within the hour, Sarah was in the court clerk's office, her federal credentials opening doors. She reviewed the case file, noting the irregularities and the lack of due diligence. She also began making inquiries about Judge Jenkins. What she found was a troubling pattern of rushed judgments and a disproportionate severity in cases involving minority defendants. Back in the courtroom, Judge Jenkins looked surprised when Sarah Chin introduced herself. "Your Honor, the U.S. Attorney's Office is now involved in the case of Naomi Brooks." A visible tension filled the room. Sarah requested an immediate continuance and a hearing to compel the release of the security footage. Judge Jenkins, clearly rattled by the federal presence, reluctantly granted the motion. The security footage, once obtained, was damning. It clearly showed Naomi picking up the sketchbook and proceeding directly to the checkout line, never concealing it or any other merchandise. The charges against Naomi were immediately dropped. But Sarah Chen's investigation didn't stop there. The pattern of misconduct she uncovered regarding Judge Jenkins led to a full-scale federal inquiry. Over the following months, numerous other cases handled by Judge Jenkins were reviewed, revealing a disturbing trend of racial bias and abuse of power. Facing mounting evidence and public outcry, Judge Jenkins was eventually removed from the bench. Naomi received a formal apology from the city and a settlement for the ordeal she had endured. Yale reaffirmed her acceptance and offered her a scholarship. Devin, standing beside Naomi as she addressed the press, spoke eloquently about the need for vigilance and the power of justice when it is applied fairly. Naomi quietly returned to her studies, her experience solidifying her resolve to pursue law and fight for civil rights. The weight of her name, amplified by her brother's unwavering commitment to justice, had indeed flipped the courtroom, not just for her, but for countless others who might have otherwise been silenced. This small act of injustice against a Black teenager had inadvertently triggered a wave of accountability, proving that even when they think no one is watching, the power of truth and family can bring even the most entrenched systems to account.